Hello and welcome to Ask the Expert. My name is Christopher and I'm your host. As you probably noticed, we've changed scenery this time and we're in our garage. And to be down here, we actually had to move out a lot of secrets, Morten. And I know that you're one of only 3 or 4 people at Dynaudio with access to this room.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's because that we have worked now for 15 years very close together with Volkswagen. And this area here is actually a red area that have been improved by the Volkswagen to be a area we can have and store prototypes from Volkswagen.
Okay.
So sometimes they arrive here with very big trucks, closed down. Everything is covered by big sheets, so
at
nobody
night
can.
Yeah,
at night perhaps sometimes, and then it's brought in here, and everything is closed down. When it is a red area, nobody is allowed to come in here except a very few of us. So that can tune the car.
So I can't get access down here?
No.
So obviously you have access and you have that for a reason. So I want to know a little bit about what is it that you do here at Dynaudio.
What we actually do down here is we take these often prototypes and do some sound tuning. A lot of the work we have naturally make some drivers that we can put in the installation of the car, and then we have to make optimize the program for the amplifier, and that we do down here by listening to music and use a lot of computers to actually program the amplifier.
And you've done that for a lot of years now.
I've done that for nearly 15 years. Yeah.
We have a lot of questions today, Morten. Should we jump right into them?
Let's do it.
Great. Morten, Jay, he asks if time alignment actually makes a difference and if it's audible for, a regular person.
Yeah, it's a good question, and one of the things that we do together with the Volkswagen is that every driver in the car is actually have its own amplifier in all our cars, and that gives us sound tuner the possibility to actually time align everything in the car, and it does a huge impact of especially the sound staging, the way you experience that the musician is in front of you on the dashboard, so to say, and not actually coming from the left side door or right side door.
So if I were to go into a car and try to figure out if can I actually hear this time alignment, I should try and notice the sound stage.
Try to imagine where the singer where the singer is standing or the guitar is playing, and by changing the time alignment, the actually time that the sound will achieve you sitting in your driver's seat can give you the impression that actually the music is in front of you. And time alignment in the bass region is very important, because a lot of bass system has a tendency to say boom in the trunk, and that is quite annoying. So if you can time align the bass performance in the front without actually delaying the tweeter so much as the bass, then you can really make all the staging go right up in front in the windscreen. Okay,
so Jay, get in the car and listen for the sound stage. But one thing you said here was that you could have the sound either way to the left or way to the right, and it makes me think of some of the questions that we suggested, because we asked what would you like to know and gave you a couple of suggestions, and one of them were, can we make different tunings for the car? We can do that.
Actually, we do. In Volkswagen, we have a setting called Focus. And the focus setting is actually changing the sound staging performance in the car. In some cars, especially for the Chinese market, we actually made the sound stage perfect for the guy who actually sitting in the rear. So that was kind of another way to make the time alignment in a different way. So the most important person, the guy who probably owned the big car, was sitting in the rear and should have the staging experience from there. So there's 4 different kind of settings in the Volkswagen, where you can make it good for everybody. So it's like in the front for both drivers in the front row, or you can optimize it to the driver itself, like you can call it ego kind of setting.
So if I'm out alone and I really want to get the best,
then you want the wide stage, and you can actually turn it a little bit to be wider and fill the whole windscreen.
So we can and we do actually.
It has the functionality, yes, in every Volkswagen we make.
Okay. As Jeremy and Kyle point out, a car is obviously filled with reflective surfaces. You have glass all over the place. I start to think, is there anything that we can do about it, and how do you work with an environment like that?
It is quite an opposite environment to actually make sound in and make good sounding systems in than compared to your living room, because as you said, reflecting areas very close by your head and your ears, but we kind of as a human being sort that out in our brain. So our brain is actually helping us in that direction. What it looks for is actually to make some recognized voices or instruments or stuff like that. So if you use the timing to actually point in the direction that the brain is going to look forward to listen to, then you actually don't hear the reflecting area so much. So
the brain actually does a lot of the work itself and sorts out.
Yeah, it sorts out the reflection. When you have some earlier sound coming to you from a special direction, then it will actually tune in to listen to that instead of the reflection.
But I guess when a car is a pretty, the car, and this is how Volkswagen build it every single time, opposed to a living room where you have no clue what it looks like. It must be an environment where you can better, don't get me wrong, but you know what you have to tune for.
Yeah, exactly. I know the environment that they are trying to listen to our system in, because they are sitting in the seats, and I know that exactly. So I can optimize actually to make the car have some focus points, some sweet spots, as we acoustic call it. And the sweet spots, I already know where people will be sitting. Yeah. So I can actually kind of optimize how soon should every sound arrive at that position, so you get the full impression of a good staging and a nice sound.
And that's where the time alignment that we talked about earlier comes into play, right?
Absolutely. Without that, it wouldn't be possible to actually make. Then it will sound like something was booming in the trunk and the door was playing too loud on the left side because you're sitting very close to it. So the balance is very important, and for that we use the multi-channel amplifiers and the time alignments.
Yeah, but now you said multi-channel amplifiers, because I know we talked about that in the article we wrote before this, and you said something to me about earlier that we use 12, 13, 14, 16 channel amplifiers. Can you talk a little bit about what does that give us of an opportunity?
Yeah, the really big advantage of having a multi-channel amplifier is the tweeter and the mid-range doesn't demand that much power compared to the bass. So actually having a lot of amplifiers using the same kind of power supply can sort things a little bit out. And if they have their own channel, even the tweeter can get the right time alignment compared to the mid-range. That is very important to actually raise the staging up into the windscreen, because without it, it would really not be possible.
So the chain actually goes that if we didn't have that multi-channel amplifier, we couldn't get the time alignment right, and then the sweet spot you talked about would be difficult.
Kind of fuzzy. Kind of fuzzy. Yeah, exactly. When we can do it with tweeters sitting in the mirror triangle of the front door and the mid-range sitting a little bit low, then when you can time that, align that to the bass performance, then you can get everything in the brain actually to fit, and you can listen to the music as you would in a normal living room. That's quite good.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
The next question is one we've combined. It's from Jason and Matt. And Morten, they want to know what kind of soundstage that we try to achieve and that we prefer.
Yeah, when we try to make the sound staging by tuning the individual channels for all the drivers in the car, normally we have a setting that will optimize the sound performance and the staging for the driver's seat, and also for the co-driver who's sitting next to him. So they will actually, due to that we have center speaker in the car today, that we can make a stereo image that actually is in front of both at the same time. We have this focus setting that we can switch to in the menu of the head unit, where you can actually move the staging to fill the whole windscreen. Okay. So it will go more to the middle of the car and to the right. So you actually have the very good staging. Yeah. But doing that will actually decrease the performance in the other seat. Yeah. So we have the all setting where it is actually in front of the driver, and then you can go to egoist mode and do it with the wide staging.
Okay. So and when we have the really wide setting, would that mean that I would hear the singer in the middle of the dashboard, so right above the head unit?
Yeah, just beneath the rear mirror. It will actually turn a little bit to the middle of the car. But what we focus most on is actually to make it wider. Okay. So the right side of the car, if you're left-hand side driving, will actually play a little louder and come a little sooner. So you get the impression that the stage is wider.
That you have a big band in front of you. And
absolutely, you are first row at the concert. Yeah.
But basically, we actually do we make two different options for people, and they can actually choose which they prefer, or...
Yeah, actually four different options. So we have the left side optimized, the right side optimized, and then optimized for the rear seat driver.
Okay.
So they actually get kind of staging in the middle of the car when sitting in the rear.
So we actually do it for everyone in the car.
Absolutely, it's what you prefer. You can actually use the way of centering of the staging you want, but the all setting is for the best achievable for everyone in the car.
Perfect. Morten, we have a question from David, and he's made an observation that in many cars you have large woofers in the doors and a smaller subwoofer in the back. Yeah. Is there any particular reason for that?
No, actually, it's a very good observation. The building of the car is actually very important. That there is quite large woofers in the front. In the middle, in the rear doors, it doesn't really matter. But a large subwoofer will actually participate in a good overall bass performance in the car. So it's very important that the woofers in the front actually can make some pressure in the low frequency area. So your expectation of the bass is actually coming from the front. Okay. If all the bass was in the rear, it was like something is booming in the trunk.
But you said something about the woofers in the middle of the car. They aren't important in this, or
no, not really, because they are kind of in a bad position compared to the cabinet. They are actually in the middle of the cabinet and kind of not putting in a lot of bass performance, actually. If you have big woofers in the front and a large subwoofer in the rear, that will actually make the bass performance.
And is that for, when David is sitting in the car, he has a large woofer in the front that plays some low end, and in the back that gives a better perception of the full bass?
Absolutely, and a better coverage of the whole cabinet in the low frequency area. It's very important that you're sitting inside the box, and that you have to take in mind when building a bass system. That you remove a lot of standing waves if you have two kind of
bass players
in the cabinet. So you actually cancellations. There is some cancellation of the standing waves in the car.
And when you say the cabinet, it's obviously
it's inside the
car. We
have
to think of it as being the car's shell is the cabinet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. David has had another question and he's made another observation. He sees that in a lot of cars there's a free air bass. I think it's
in the hatch shelf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he thinks that it tends to rattle a lot.
Yeah.
Why don't you build an enclosure for them?
In our design in the Volkswagen, we have a closed enclosure as a subwoofer driver. Okay. Because placing a big woofer in the hatch shelf is like it's a really problematic because it can rattle a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movement in the bass region, and you have to do a lot of stiffness and a lot of extra work to actually make the hat shelf woofer work properly.
Okay.
I have seen it working, but normally it will be better to actually place it in the trunk in a closed enclosure.
And we do that.
And we do that, yes.
Okay, but it can work.
It can work, yes.
Cool. Morten, John, he thinks that we should add noise dampening to the doors. Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. It is very important when you make sound systems in cars to secure that the drivers is placed in a good cabinet, so to speak. It is compared to your living room loudspeakers, steady and solid cabinet are very, very important for the performance. In some cars in the lower end of the price range, they are doing it not because they want to save weight and money. In the more expensive car, the high class car, the doors are very, very good damped. So it would be a good idea, and it will benefit the sound performance. So if I have my own car, I will actually put some extra in because it will improve the sound performance.
If we go back to, you said that in higher price range cars, the doors are good. Is that because they are stiffer, or is there
stiffer? They're stiffer, and the interior is perhaps leather and more thick and more nice to touch, and the whole weight of the door is actually quite increased compared to the smaller cars.
So there is actually some noise dampening in higher quality.
Absolutely,
cars.
Because the customer buying these kind of cars will also prefer to drive on the highway with high speed and not have all the road noise and stuff. So they're actually quite more damped than the usual one.
Okay. And you just said, I heard, that if you had your own car, you would add something. And that leads me to one of the other topics that we asked if people wanted to learn more about. What can I do myself without spending a fortune? So do you have any tips? You talked about dampening now. Is there anything else that people can do?
If you are kind of a do-it-yourself man and not afraid of actually mucking around with the interior, getting your hands dirty, I would actually increase the damping indoors, because look at it as a loudspeaker. The cabinet should be stiff and damped, and to perhaps put some foam between the interior of the door and the plate of the door would actually keep it from rattling. And that is one of the big issues in cars, that things get a little loose and then they rattle. When
from
they come
wear and tear.
From the bass boost, then the rattling starts. So if you can put some damping material or some foam between the interior, that will increase the performance.
Okay. And I have a question from myself, because I remember that in my first car, I had a head unit where I could choose. The EQ, I could get it +8 in bass and +8 in treble. Should I do that, or should I stay far away?
When you do this, you kind of change things a lot. In a car like Volkswagen, where we have tuned the system, it shouldn't be necessary. We have some settings that actually put some more fun into it. We call dynamic, a little more bass, a little more playing rock music, and we have the authentic that is actually the most clean in settings of them all. It put a lot of bass in. For some people, they like that, but I would say changing the drivers in a standard in your own car, not being a Volkswagen, and actually add a little damping to the door. That will increase the performance, I think.
Perfect. Thanks. Craig, he has a 3-way Dynaudio system in his car, Morten, and he feels like he has to, when he's listening to them, he has to crank up the power for them to play really, really well. Is there any point to that, or?
Actually, he could, when he have some systems and some amplification and the head unit, there could be a mismatch how the loudness function is integrated in the head unit compared to his system now. One of the reasons is that loudness is actually try to increase the bass level of the sound when you're not playing that loud. But if that is out of the scale, then he will experience when playing louder it will sound very good, and that's because now you're outside the functionality of the loudness function.
Yeah.
So I think what he should try to do is actually to perhaps increase the gain of his amplifier, so he can shift the area for the loudness function actually
and align it properly.
Yeah, align it properly.
Okay.
We do that in our cars. Is very, very important, because if we don't do it correctly, then listening to music at very low level will actually sound a little bit thin and a little bit uninteresting.
Yeah. So Craig, go back home and check the
loudness function.
Function and amplify gain, you said?
Yeah, that could be a way to solve it. Actually, if he can crank up the amplifier gain a little bit.
Okay. He had 2 more questions, Morten, that I'd like for us to talk about. One was if the drivers that we use in cars are actually lower graded drivers than the ones that we, for instance, use in home speakers.
Yeah, naturally, the construction is a little bit different. These ones in cars are kind of optimized for weight because of lower weight, better with mileage for the fuel. But the driver system and the magnet system and the voice coils and stuff are the same, so they're not downgraded by performance.
Okay,
no.
Cool. And his final question was, how many watts do we actually use per channel?
It's in the car like the Passat we're standing in front of here. They have a 16-channel amplifier, and we know that for the woofers they need more power. So in this one there is 4-channel with around 120 watt in 8 ohm, and then there are the smaller channels for the mid-range and tweeters in a total of around 600 watt.
So we specify each channel for the driver,
and especially the woofers, they need more. So we have to put some high power channels for the woofer channels.
Great. That was a lot of really good questions, don't you think, Morten?
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, we're out of them now, so we're at the end. And I want to say thank you for joining us and taking time out of your schedule.
You're welcome.
And as always, guys, we truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to post questions to us. Thank you for watching.